you guys hear me out there? Let's make sure we're good to go. Chief Hedrick, can you hear me out there? Good to go? All right.
But we can't hear them.
Yeah, we can't hear you at this point, or you just mute it, and then we'll make sure we got that worked out before we get started. Well, inevitably, no matter how hard we practiced or rehearse this, there's always going to be something at the end here. So.
How about now, Chief? Can you hear us?
Yep, we're good to go. All right. So we'll get started. Thanks for coming to today's press conference. We're talking about radios and radio traffic and some updates that are taking place within both of our communities. As you see, Sheriff Milstead is here with us in Sioux Falls, and Chief Hedrick and Sheriff Mueller from Pennington County. We'll start off just talking about what this move is, and it's a P25 is one part of this, about our radios and how we're updating our radios within our communities. This was a federal government initiative after 9/11. Every agency across the U.S. needed to be P25 compliant by 2025. The reason for this is it brings all agencies in alignment for natural disasters, any big events, and across the state and across the country. Also allows different brands of radios to communicate with each other, and allows for more effective communication, especially in times of disaster. So in order to do this throughout the years, this is a very costly initiative, which is why for over 10 years we've been updating radios, not only our portables, but this also requires our in-car radios to be updated as well. And it also required an upgrade in towers. And South Dakota started upgrading its towers from west to east this year. Most of those towers have already been upgraded, and I think our tower here in the Sioux Falls area is the last tower to be upgraded. Again, this will strengthen resources and overall response to incidents throughout our state and throughout our country, providing better coordination of those resources. In upgrading all this technology, we were looking at the option of what having to touch every single radio that we have did, and we are looking at, or we will be, with our partners across the state in Pennington and Rapid, going to encrypted radios, which means public scanners will no longer be available in Minnehaha County and Pennington County starting November 13th. Now, this decision was not made lightly. We've talked about a lot of different avenues, engaged our partners in many different ways, and really what it comes down to is an officer safety issue and a victim protection issue. We've already had encrypted radios for SWAT and for a few other of our units. Other agencies across the state, including Yankton, have been doing encrypted, and really, but when we look at the safety of our teams, our victims, and our witnesses, this is what it comes down to. And we have had numerous situations just recently where we are catching people engaged in criminal activity who are listening to our scanners, either in their earbuds or in their phone app capabilities. We've had people interrupt different crime scenes. We've had victims' names being aired, locations being aired, and really as the technology has expanded, these tools are being used not only to compromise officer safety, but also victim and witness privacy. And I think this is something we will always, as law enforcement, want to keep the public's trust and be transparent, which is why we're having this sort of communication today, so we can engage with you. And we will not lose that by encrypting our radios. We will continue to connect with the community face to face. We have outstanding relationships with our media and see them as great partners as we work through issues. And we still be available as we now for all media inquiries and press briefs. And again, I think something that as technology changes, we lose sight of the technology we're already making available, which is we have a police log that we update every 5 to 10 minutes on our website that shows what calls are taking place. That log is kind of sanitized for Marcy's Law compliance and for other privacy factors, is the information we would provide in this briefing has to be sometimes too. We also have our crime map, which is available, which highlights all the events and things that have happened within our community, as does Pennington and Rapid and Minnehaha County, as we work on expanding our technology in that area too. Continue to work with the media, again, on impactful situations. You know that we put information out on social media, especially when it comes to anything that the public would need to know about in different ways. And again, always have our team as accessible, and we want to make sure we're as transparent as possible in communicating what's going on in our community, from that crime staff prep briefing to everything in between. We're always seeking to engage. But when it comes down to it, we have to look at our officer safety issues and components that are there, as well as the victim privacy issues that are there. and this is a move that we feel puts us in the right direction in both those things. So I'll turn it over to Chief Hedrick in Rapid City to cover some issues.
Great. Thank you, Chief Toom. As stated, we are moving to encrypt our radios for several different reasons. The first one being technology continues to advance. And these days, every law enforcement agency is looking down the road to utilize the most up-to-date technology and practices for safety purposes. It also means that we need to be aware of national trends that are occurring because they impact our officers here at home, here in South Dakota, here in our local communities. Agencies across the country have witnessed an increase in violence towards police officers over the last few years, an increase in ambush situations towards police officers over the last couple of years. And with that violence, we here locally as well, we witness challenges to retaining good, qualified police officers. According to the FBI, there was a 52% increase in assaults on law enforcement from 2021 to 2022, from 2021 to 2022, and that marks a 10.5% increase since 2020 itself. Nationwide, law enforcement agencies have utilized this technology, the technology we're talking about here today, to address safety issues for officers and to protect witnesses and victims so their personal information isn't being aired out publicly over the radio. Second, I gotta mention accountability. As law enforcement, we uphold public safety, and while holding offenders accountable for their actions, it's what we do, it's why we're here. And in recent years, our officers have encountered suspects actively committing crimes out in our community that are adjusting their actions based upon live scanner traffic. And this scanner traffic is available on nearly every single smartphone. The public has an expectation that if they call the police, we're going to track down the suspects and apprehend them. And this is a job that's difficult when the bad guy can listen to our playbook on their cell phone. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention transparency. I'll echo Chief Toom here a little bit. To ensure we stay transparent to the public we serve, earlier this year we introduced a new feature on our department website that allows the public to access information about our calls for service and the calls our officers are responding to. This information can be looked up by going to our website. We have our community call for service log and our community crime map as well, two separate information sources. And we're going to continue to use social media to update the public on the big things happening within our city. I think we've done a really good job of being transparent when we have something major occurring that affects many people. We're going to continue to do that. And for us, it's important that we maintain our positive working relationship with our local media. It's a matter of picking up the phone and giving us a call when you're wondering what's going on, and on top of us committing that proactive behavior. I'm here to commit that transparency about public safety issues in our community is here to stay. And with that, I want to turn it over to Sheriff Mueller.
Thank you, Chief Hedrick. Just 2 quick points that I want to continue to stress and reiterate that you've already heard here today are the necessity to make this change based on our officer safety related impacts related to people using scanners and scanner apps, and the importance of protecting personal information for our crime victims and witnesses. You know, in recent years, our law enforcement officers have noticed an increasing trend for burglars and those who have active warrants using the scanners to evade law enforcement. And we have also had encounters with individuals who are actively stalking police officers as they respond for calls for service. They routinely show up and interfere with law enforcement contacts and investigations. I spoke with our Warrants Division Commander yesterday, and he reiterated that our Warrant Task Force, who is out there tracking down the most violent offenders in our community, routinely has to adjust their radio traffic and not share critical safety information because they know those that they're tracking down are listening to the apps. Personal information related to crime victims and witnesses are routinely transmitted over law enforcement radios, and this is something that most people don't think about until they're calling in a disturbance at their neighbor's residence, calling in a drunk driver, or until you or somebody that you know has extremely personal and identifying information that's shared over a law enforcement radio. And this happens every day, and there's dozens of individuals out there, unknown individuals, listening to this radio traffic. Radio encryption will have an immediate and positive impact on law enforcement safety, and will have an immediate and positive impact when it comes to protecting, identifying, and personal information for crime victims and witnesses. Thank you. I'll turn it over to Sheriff Milstead, I believe, in Minnehaha.
I think Sheriff Mueller, Chief Toom, Chief Hedrick have been pretty articulate in explaining to you why we're making this change. The increase in assaults on officers nationwide is concerning. The fact that many people now, including bad guys, carry scanners and monitor what we're doing and sometimes beat us to the scene of those situations. I think they add up to the fact that this is the right thing to do for public safety. That's our job. It gives us an advantage over criminals that currently are tracking what we're doing, when we're doing it, and where we're at. Quite frankly, it makes some of the people in this room, makes your job harder. Certainly you rely on police scanner traffic to report to the public what you see and what's going on in the community. So it puts on us an additional burden that I think we were going to accept. And that is, for example, our crime log that is a log of all the calls that our officers are responding on has been updated once a day. I'm moving that to a 30-minute delay of real time. So you're going to have access to what information is, what calls were going on with a 30-minute delay. I'm going to put upon my supervisors in the field to be better or to change the way we do business when it comes to notifying the public and notifying the media of incidents that we're dealing with that we think that you would want to be aware of. For instance, a serious accident where there was traffic control, closed roads, weather conditions, could be a serious incident in a community. We contract with multiple communities in the county where law enforcement is present. We want you to avoid an area. We'll do that for you because we think that you're that important connection between law enforcement and the public. So yes, it will make your job a little more difficult because you won't have it. You're not going to be hearing the scanner, but you will have access to that information, and we are going to change the way we do business to try to provide you with better information. You live in this community. You're an important part. You're the link between us and the citizens. We will continue to work with you, and we want to work with you. But the bad guys are gaining an advantage over us with the modern technology available. Look, I've been here a long time, okay? We've had transitions in technology throughout my career, and we've adjusted the way that we do business. When this idea of scrambling the radio traffic or encrypting the radio traffic came up, we knew that it comes at a cost. But when I weigh the risk of not encrypting with the rewards of encrypting, it's the best thing that we can do. It's the right thing to do for public safety. It's the right thing to do for the safety of the men and women in uniform working the streets. And we will work with you in the media to make sure that this transition works and that you're able to continue to provide critical information to the public that we rely heavily on the media. So with that, to close it out, I'm going to ask Chief Toom to step up before we take questions.
Yeah. We wanted to do this together so we could all capture different pieces of this conversation, again, for our two communities and how it impacts. And I know will be further discussions, further questions that will come from this, but in many ways, shapes or forms, I've talked to people throughout the years about the scanner traffic, and a lot of it comes down to, well, there's public information pieces, a lot of it comes to entertainment and curiosity, right, on top of the criminal element that's using it. Some of the other people are just basically interested and curious what's going on. And for us to weigh this as police administrators and say that entertainment and curiosity outweigh officer safety and victim protection, I think you can see where our priorities lie. And as a community, I think we can understand that discussion on how we have to do our business. But again, the transparency piece, the crime log and the crime map, we've been steering people to some of these resources that we've had for years and they're underutilized. We hope now that as this technology changes, people can utilize that technology. And again, we want to be accessible and transparent and receptive, because we have a great relationship with our media, and I think all of us in this press conference agree that a strong, healthy relationship with the media benefits us all, and we want to keep that going. At this point, we take any questions, if you have any.
Yeah, I have a question. So at times the scanner has been the best way to know like the big things that are happening in the moment.
Yeah.
So that kind of changes how we as press and reporters do our jobs. So I guess what are the alternatives to that you guys will let us know when something big is happening like at the moment rather than like a little bit later?
So you often sometimes know with our moment that you'll call in for a media inquiry, and again, you're doing your job. It's about 20 minutes into and we may not get back to you for quite some time, right? Because we're dealing with the situation in the moment or trying to work through that stuff. And that's where Sheriff Milstead hit on this too, where we kind of would defer some things to press briefings sometimes. We just have to be more responsive to those press inquiries, but also make sure we utilize our channel. Because I know sometimes things would go out and then we're providing different information later as to what's actually happening. And so I think we just have to kind of work on that relationship a little bit. And it may be, people, like I said, the old days of media, providing a few more tips of the moment, right? I think that's kind of how things used to happen, where there'd be a tip that something was going on. And then we can work through that too as far as how we're going to notify. But that crime log, I encourage you to check it out. It's got a lot of good information on it as far as what's happening and where, and then we can kind of build from there.
Do you know, is every agency in Minnehaha County, such as each department, such as police, fire, medics, are they all going encrypted, or is it just police that is doing it?
So as we're having the conversation right now, it's law enforcement centric, but we're also talking to our different partners that use those radios, in particular fire and some other rural volunteer fire departments and different things of that nature, conversing with Brandon. And really what it comes down to, even if you look at from a fire standpoint, there's enough incidents over the past few years where firefighters have been ambushed, right? And there's been, if you listen to some of that scanner traffic, it's people who are either in mental health crisis or addresses where people are having serious medical events, and so there's some privacy pieces there too. And those are things that we want to work through, but we also want to speak for other agencies. We're in the efforts of looking at how that goes, but today was focused on, reality is most people care about law enforcement response, because we kind of produce some of the more interesting calls for the media standpoint, and we're just going to focus on that. Do you have something to add to that, Sheriff?
Well, yeah, that's a really good question, and probably to bring it, and it may be the same in Pennington and Rapid, is we have a central Metro 911 center. So they'll be, they manage our transmissions, so when they're sending, whether it's the highway patrol or the deputy sheriffs or PD or rural fire, we use the same center. So the ultimate goal at some point will be encrypted, probably countywide, bringing those other agencies in. But again, through our log, we'll report what we're doing. Instead of listening to a regular update, you'll probably be looking at a regular update of what calls were going on. So you'll be aware of the call. And then, as I indicated, we'll have to get better at letting you know when we're on something. Obviously, if we're on a shooting, a situation, we're not going to be able to say, okay, well, my job is now to call the media. We'll probably use our social media as part of it to try to get the word out so that you can be alerted to what's going on. In particular, some of these cases where we need people to stay away from a particular area. But the fact that we have Metro Communications as a partner in this, and that they dispatch for all of our agencies, is important. And the same for Pennington and Rapid that utilize their own center.
You guys have the capability in some regards now to go offline with, you mentioned the warrant folks, SWAT. If there's an issue out there with the regular patrol, can't those guys just do that too?
Oh, yeah. And so there's what we know and then there's what we don't know, right? I mean, so SWAT or warrants are typically dealing with a known commodity or a known issue. The communication of trying to flip back and forth between encryption or not on a day-to-day basis is simply pretty complex, and it doesn't necessarily alleviate some of the concerns we have with victim issues or privacy issues, because pretty much every call we go on has some sort of privacy component. Sam's restricted as to what he can talk about on a regular basis from this point, and again, I think we've seen from just situations around the country, a regular call, as in Fargo, can turn into a very tragic call. The genesis of that call was a traffic accident. right? So trying to pick and choose on what we're gonna encrypt or not encrypt is kind of, we have to kind of go with that whole approach, just kind of restrict some traffic. But even something as minor as street racing, or minor in the grand
Yeah.
scheme of like crimes, right? So we're looking at traffic offenses of street racing, which are a major complaint for us. They can monitor the scanner and just be gone on that too, right? Even when that call's dispatched. So the pick or choose approach, right, on what's severe enough or what isn't, it's just kind of a go across the board to take that element out.
Is there a cost associated with going encrypted?
So the big cost was the radio component, right? Because we had to touch every single radio that we own over the course of, the nice thing is we had over a 10-year notice that we've been working on this and making these upgrades. And then there's components, because everything's digital now, right? What's in that radio that allows us to do it or not. And we built in the radios that they would have that piece of equipment that we could program, right, in order to do that. And we can get you the cost piece on that. I can't quote it for you on the top of my head. But the bigger price was all these radios, because a portable is pretty expensive. We can provide that for you, but even it was shocking to me even when I learned the price, right? So I know just how we spend on radios, just in general, encrypted or not.
You guys could have done encrypted 10 years ago, but that
Yeah.
would have created a need for a special appropriation to make that happen.
Yeah.
Where the P25 was coming either way.
Yeah.
You were going to have to spend that money regardless.
And so they really are two separate issues, but because of P25, we had to touch every single radio. And having to touch every single radio, it gave us the opportunity then to choose that encryption option. We could have gone back with the old technology, but then would have been having to renegotiate all the different things, the pieces that we had made at that point with that equipment. So in upgrading the technology, we also took the opportunity to add that piece. Because like you said, we had encryption in the past on our previous radios, but we really had it just for SWAT and for some other special operations pieces. Are there any questions in Rapid City? Because I don't want to make sure we don't just.
We come first.
Yeah, I know you guys go first, always. But I want to make sure we don't. We make sure we split this evenly, since we've got you on the jumbo board over there. But looks like no. Oh, you all right? Okay.
And the most recent call was at 7:15 this morning, so are you guys looking at possibly making the delay on that shorter, like if you're moving on them?
Yeah, what is our current delay, Brendan?
I believe it's 4 hours.
4-hour delay currently.
Okay.
And, we're gonna continue to monitor that. I think it is important that we do have some delay. We essentially wouldn't be helping ourselves out at all in the safety component if these were immediately up to date. And plus, there are some challenges with getting the call for service into the log itself. It does take a little bit of time. And our community crime map, I believe, is at a daily update as well?
Yep, that was updated on an hourly basis.
Okay, so the community crime map is hourly. The log itself is within a 4-hour window. And I'll let the sheriff speak to his plans here.
And currently, the sheriff's office does not have that log up and running or the crime map, but our supervisors are working behind the scenes with the Rapid City Police Department and the vendor that they utilize to get on the same cycle with the same log and the same crime mapping information out there. So we're going to continue to work together with the police department, and hopefully in the very near future, we'll be up and running with the same technology, same format, and the same, time constraints that the police department's using.
Would you guys combine that into one log and one map, or would you have two separate ones?
I think it's going to probably come as two separate ones logistically, because it pulls off of a different set of information on the technology side.
Yeah, and another one of my questions was something that someone asked over there, as far as, the brain just shut off.
That's okay. Did it have to do with maybe fire department?
Okay, perfect,
Yeah.
that was the question. Thank you.
Yes, so I have been in communication with our fire chief. At this time, he was planning on allowing all of the radios for law enforcement to get that service first. And it is sort of a time-consuming process. As Chief Toom mentioned, every single radio needs to be serviced by a technician. So the plan was for us to get that done first, and I do believe the fire chief is looking at this for possibly next year.
Is this, so this is, I was going to run this one, it's going to be take effect.
Yep, so November 13th is when we're going to turn the switch.
Is that the same for you guys?
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people will use the scanner, just people in the community wanting to know what's going on in their neighborhood. Maybe they hear sirens in the middle of the night, and there's kind of that, you know, a lot of people find some comfort in that, being able to listen to what's going on. So, I know you talked about transparency, but do you think we'll see an increase in the information that you guys put out to kind of fill that gap?
I think so. I think we're gonna have to. And, you know, I do think we do a good job of explaining, hey, we have this major incident happening. You know, for us, Twitter has been a pretty quick way to get out information. Hey, we're in the 300 block of wherever, large response. We're gonna continue to do that. But yeah, I think you're right. I think our daily information that we push out, we're gonna have to be more engaged.
And I think it's probably not realistic that every time a law enforcement officer turns the lights and siren on, that you're gonna get an update for us as to what they're going to. But I agree with Chief Hedrick that we've got our supervisors out there on the street that are working need to have a good understanding of what the community needs to know and understand to keep them safe when we're responding to a call for service, and we'll continue to find ways to be more innovative with that, getting that information to our community.
I know you guys aren't lawyers, but do you know if there's a law that gives you guys the discretion to make this decision, or is there anything in the books?
There's nothing that I'm aware of that requires us to provide this traffic, this radio traffic. It's just something that has been done. It's the way we've done it. And, you know, over the last few years with technology advances, with increases in terrorism, 9/11 is a big piece that we point to where we saw many changes occurring. You know, you used to be able to just walk into a school whenever you wanted. And because of safety, things have changed. This is a very similar type of scenario where we're dealing with a pretty extreme safety issue for our folks and a privacy issue for the citizens that we serve. And we're making a change in the best interest of safety and keeping our community, their personal information safe as well.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, some of you who have been in media for a long time remember that you used to have a special piece of scanner equipment, which is an investment to make in order to do that. Well, again, technology has changed as far as what we get on our smartphones and how we get that interaction, but our response to that technology hasn't changed, I think, and that's something too. You used to be able to safeguard if I had to make a several $1,000s investment on that scanner as far as what was happening. And so I think that's just a great point about how technology has changed, the world has changed, even how we design our buildings has changed based off recent things, and we have to just adjust to that.
You know, there was, is there any, who'd you get buy-in from this? I mean, it's just the administration, did you talk to the city council, it's a policy, council's
So-
supposed to set policy, how do you square that?
Well, it's an operational piece for us, right? You know, and I think we have a good relationship with the city council, provided them some written communication. But in many ways, because of the multi-agency approach, like, we didn't want to be providing information that Rapid has the right to provide to their people, or Pennington has the right to provide to their people. So we communicated internally quite a bit, but also was able to provide the council that information through an email and talk about the different things and engage them to open conversation on that topic. Because anytime with the council, and I think it's very similar out on the other side of the state, we want to engage with them and make sure they understand our reasoning, but it's an operational piece that we feel that we have the right to make as far as how we serve. And as far as buy-in, if you ask our officers, they're completely bought in on it, right? Because they understand the environment that they're working in, the challenges that they deal with. And I think that's something we don't want to lose sight of. Again, that what is this all about? It's about officer safety and victim protection. And that's where I think you'll see a lot of officers who are obviously very pleased that we're making this move, and that's why we want to support them in that way.
Hey, Chief Toom, can I add one thing as well on top of that? I just mentioned that, you know, this is new to us, it's new to us here in South Dakota, but this is a nationwide trend that's occurring everywhere. 34 states have some form of encryption to some degree already. You know, we're following suit with what many other locations are doing to make sure that they're keeping people safe.
Mr. Hedrick, you mentioned that it was a trend. Is it a trend or a requirement? Like, is all of South Dakota supposed to go to encryption
So
at some point?
that's a great question. I think the question, if you didn't hear, was, is this a trend or a requirement? Is all South Dakota supposed to go to this? And I think the conversation is broader. Having had conversations with our counterparts in Brandon, our counterparts in Brookings. Obviously, Yankton has already made the move, right? And there's other people who are looking at, okay, do I have the capacity to do this? Can I make the commitment to do it? How do our partners feel about it? Because a lot of the conversations we had to have, well, how will this work with our other partners like Highway Patrol, engaging them in conversations. So I think for each agency or each region, they're gonna have to make a determination as to what it is. But yeah, I think it's not a requirement, right?
Not
It's
a federal requirement.
No, but it's a trend, and it's probably becoming a best practice just to protect people and victims.
And we had a question out here about other cities that are fully encrypted. And, we did a little bit of research on this. Our research specialist spent some time on this. And this is not an all-inclusive list, but I can tell you that the following cities are fully encrypted. Baltimore, New York, Denver, San Francisco, San Jose, Omaha, Louisville, Kentucky, San Diego, over 100 agencies in California. The list goes on and on. It's not I guess what I'm trying to say is many other locations are looking at this as a best practice.
Well, just, quickly piggyback on one of the questions that's asked in Sioux Falls, for Brown City, it's also a place where information was available, but now it became more, financially feasible to roll it out.
For us, we've been trying to plan just much like our East River counterparts here. We've been planning for this radio transition for over 10 years. We knew this was coming. It allowed us to purchase upgraded radios that could all talk to each other. And as we've been working through that, encryption has been involved in the conversation. We knew once we had this technology available and we all had the ability to be on the same page and the same radio channels itself, we were able to then move into the encryption conversation, and that's where we're at right now.
Just one quick item too is, for people intending to do bad things, to be able to hear everything the cops are doing at their fingertip is putting them at the advantage. And part of our job is public safety, and we're recognizing that people doing bad things, and I don't care if it's an underage alcohol party, or street racing, or an armed robber, or car hoppers, or burglars. They all can listen to us on their scanner and know everything we're doing, when we're dispatched, where our closest car is, how long it's gonna take us to get there. I think the public would expect us to make this move, to try to give us a better chance at interrupting crime, at catching the bad guys, when they're trying, at a time where they will no longer be able to listen to where my car is, how fast the deputy will be there, and whether or not law enforcement is coming to break up a bunch of underage people at an alcohol party. So for us, I think, it's gonna make your job harder, but I think the general public understands, for us, preservation of the peace, protection of life and property, it's like our statutory duty. I think this is the right thing to do.
So you guys work closely with multiple agencies in the area, such as, for instance, Lincoln County's part of Sioux Falls, South Dakota Highway Patrol and stuff like that. How are you guys going about, with that transition between those agencies to be able to come in and, if you're 100% encrypted, Lincoln County's not encrypted, so how are you working on that transitioning?
So as we work on the different nuances, even back when we had encrypted for our SWAT, if you didn't have your radio set, you would transmit, but it would go out unencrypted, right? It's a setting, it's a thing that we have to work. We've talked with HP about how that works with their system, and they're able to make the accommodations where they can hear and scan our traffic, respond, and do what they need to do. And again, we'll have those, it's gonna be some settings, right, that have to take place, because we wanna be able to work with them on the different programs that we work on. When we need them, we obviously need to communicate. But even as of now, it's somewhat difficult for us to communicate, because we have our dispatch, Lincoln has their dispatch, HP goes through state radio. So there's a little bit of communication efficiency we can gain in the future even more as we kind of work and put our dispatches together. But there's some interagency channels and some other things that we're obviously working on. And we'll work through those hurdles, because we don't want to lose that ability. Because when a deputy calls for help at whatever mile road, because I can't keep straight because I'm a city cop, right? That's what it comes down to. we need the HP to know, right? We need the HP to know so they can go assist them. Conversely, when we need some help, HP is always good at coming by our side within town and coming to help us in situations. So again, we may have to make some tweaks, make sure some settings are good on radios, but that's something we don't want to sacrifice. All right. Anything else out there? All right. Hey, thank you. And I mean this because I think we live in a unique spot, and our relationship with the media is pretty open. There's not a time when you don't reach out to the sheriff and I, or either West River, where we're not willing to engage and talk to you about a topic. I think we're pretty open, and that's going to maintain. We want to make sure, obviously, you guys know Sam well enough. You want to talk about locking your doors and your cars while we're here, as long as we got an audience? No? Okay. But yeah, just keep that relationship going, keep our communication up, and we'll work through. There's going to be some things we just got to kind of work through as we work into this new era of how we communicate on the radio. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If anybody has any questions now, off camera or anything, you guys need anything?
We just want to.
Don't you worry, Aaron McGowan would still be in office if there wasn't a police scanner?
No comment on that. That's not that we comment on that. But is this a Dakota Scout hat or what is it?
No, this is my Friday hat.
Your Friday hat? Okay,
It's
got
Pearl
it.
Jam.
Yeah, okay, got it.
See you guys.
Yeah, no, thanks again. We'll check out the log, and our mapping will probably experience a few different tweaks too as we roll into this, on how often it refreshes. There's a lot of good information on there, so thank you. Yeah.
Is this still briefing?
Yeah, I got a couple of things.
Oh yeah, I was about to leave.
Are we rolling? Did I
It's
say
like,
that?
okay.
Today is a day, there's a couple of things that I don't want to skip over.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, you guys are good. Now, part two, so we had a couple of robberies on the log. First one happened about 9:45 last night. That was on 49th Street, kind of near, I guess I'll just say Louise. And a guy in a red Jeep came into the business and essentially shoplifted a couple of cans of alcohol. He was confronted on the way out, showed a handgun, and then left. And then just before 3 a.m., there was same exact thing, a red Jeep Cherokee pulled into the parking lot at a Freedom gas station. This was near 25th and Minnesota area. That one, he pointed a gun at the clerk and ended up taking some vape pens and some cans of alcohol. We had a lot of information, video at both places that was shared amongst officers. And then this morning, about 7:30, we had a call on the 1900 block of West 22nd Street of a vehicle that was parked in a yard. It was running, and the person said somebody had been sleeping or passed out inside of it. The officers got there, found this person was a match to the person that had robbed the two convenience stores. He was initially detained, and then they ended up finding out, I don't have a time on that, but there was at the Ramada Inn on South Lyons Avenue, the suspect at some point drove there, parked the Jeep in the parking lot, went inside. There were some keys that were left on a desk. He grabbed those keys and then stole a car that was in that parking lot. That's what he ended up on 22nd Street. That was another stolen vehicle. Still had the keys to the Jeep with him as well. So once they got everything pieced together, he was arrested for 2 counts of robbery, 3 counts of aggravated assault, possession of a stolen vehicle, and the gun he was used was also stolen. So that was possession of a stolen handgun. That gun had been stolen from an unlocked car that had keys left in it. That was on October 24th. The car, or vehicle, I guess it was a truck in that situation. The truck was recovered the next day, but obviously the gun had not been found. Got all that? Okay.
Can you share the
Did we have
name?
Yeah, I can get you his name. His last name is Archambeau, Archambeau. First is Brian, Bryan. Middle is Louis, Louis, and he's 20 from Sioux Falls. And he was also a Pearl absconder, so he's arrested on that too. Good on that one. And I have one other, and this, I was sick last Wednesday, so this information didn't go out, so I apologize for that. But just after midnight, probably about 12:10 a.m. on Wednesday, November 1st, there were some people. We had a 17-year-old, a 19-year-old, 17-year-old guy, a 19-year-old woman, and then a 1-year-old girl were in a car parked on North Drive by the monument. Just kind of hanging out, I guess. They noticed a dark-colored SUV drove by, kind of circled and then left, and then a short time later, it came back to that same area and then fired a gun several times at their parked car. The SUV took off after that. As the officers were investigating, they ended up finding 13 shell casings. The car had been struck several times. At one point, we believe one of the bullet fragments kind of grazed the 17-year-old's foot, so no serious injuries there. There were bullets that were found in the headrest. The car seat that the child was in, there was a bullet that was found in the back of that. The only injury we had was from the foot, so it could have been a lot worse. We had officers with our violent crimes unit were doing the follow-up on this. They had information and ended up finding the suspect vehicle near 85th and Minnesota. That was around 8 p.m. last night. The suspect was arrested and still had the gun. We believe that was the gun that was used during that shooting. So he was arrested for 3 counts of aggravated assault, discharge of firearm into an occupied vehicle, and then reckless discharge of a firearm. And his last name is Fuse, F-U-S-E. First, I'll spell it M-A-N-A-R-I-O-N. Middle is Timothy Douglas, Timothy Douglas, and he's 19 from Sioux Falls.
Was there a relationship established?
No, the victims said that they had no idea who he was. No, there hadn't been any conversation or anything. They just noticed that the SUV drove by the first time and came back a second time. I think they had been there a while and they had seen a couple other cars. They thought it was a little unusual that SUV kind of just drove in, circled around, and left, because other cars they had noticed would stop for at least a short amount of time before leaving. But from what we've been able to determine, there's no connection between the victim and the suspect.
Does that make this scarier?
Sure. Yeah, there's a lot of crimes, especially crimes involving violence like this, where there's some connection between the victim and suspects. There is random crime. That's what makes it a little bit more scary. It's a harder crime to solve when there's no connection. It happens. We know that it happens. It's probably not as frequent as what people think it is, but it's still something that's very concerning.
How is that not attempted murder?
Those charging decisions, things can change. What the information we had, it's very clear that aggravated assault statute, the elements of that, then the shooting, the reckless discharge and the discharge of a firearm. There's certain elements that need to be covered for that. Those, it's pretty much a no-brainer. If you're looking at those more serious charges, certainly the state's attorney's office has the ability to amend or recharge those as something as a higher one. A charge like an attempted murder, I would say almost all the time there's going to be some discussion with somebody at the state's attorney's office whether that would be something that should be appropriate or not. We have enough of the elements of those crimes for these charges, and so they're all felony charges. I think reckless discharge might be a misdemeanor, but certainly the 3 counts of aggravated assault are felony charges, so that's gonna get the person arrested and held in jail. And if, once the state's attorney's office reviews it and decides, you know, some other charges might be better or more appropriate, then they have the ability to change those.
How many shots again?
There were 13 shell casings found. I don't know if we know a total number of gunshots, but at least 13 casings were found.
Was the 1-year-old in the car seat?
Yes, the 1-year-old was in the car seat at the time.
Can you disclose what type of gun it was?
I don't know if I have that.
Handgun.
It was a handgun, yeah. Sorry for my sniffing. She said he had a gun.
I'm good with a handgun.
Yeah, it was a handgun, yeah.
So the bullet that was found in the car seat, was that in the back of the back, or like just?
No,
in-
yeah, I think the bullet in the car seat, I believe I don't know if they know this for sure, but they believe it came through the trunk and then the back of the car seat. And,
The trunk slowed it down.
well, yeah, in theory. I mean, there was a round that was in the back of a headrest too, for one of I think that was the driver's seat. That one, I think they believe came maybe through a back window, but that number of gunshots, it's kind of hard to know exactly where each round went and what the path was, but that was kind of the initial thought. That's it. Unless you have anything else?